What's up, VC? Welcome back to my latest installment in jazz, showing my jazz collection A to Z, showing and listening to, working my way through. Today featuring one artist, Gato Barbieri. Gato. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him as an artist. If not, check it out. I'm gonna go through just a little history and just go through the records quickly. I'll explain why. So, decided to make this into one video. I did start dipping into the next couple artists, Barron and Bartz. And as I explained, when I remember, I would pull from my top shelf, where I have things organized by label a bit. So Gato is one of those artists where I knew I had a record stashed separate from my A to Z section, and that was in the ESP-DISK section. So Gato Barbieri, from Argentina originally, and just from reading some liner notes here, brief little history, very short. Long story short is completely fell in love with jazz. Wasn't really drawn to kind of the music from Argentina, tango, stuff like that. He was just completely enamored with jazz, was playing jazz in Argentina, but wasn't, at a certain point, didn't feel like he was being challenged enough, wasn't growing, and decided he needed to move on, to switch it up. And I think he went to Brazil for a little bit, but then ended up making the jump to Europe to kind of join other jazz musicians and kind of push himself forward, propel himself forward within the world of jazz music, which he loved and lived in. That's kind of where he didn't, at this point, wasn't playing any Argentinian or Brazilian or Latin music. So I think the first place he went was Italy, but that's where he hooked up with Don Cherry, as well as other, American jazz musicians, and I'm sure some European ones as well, but American jazz musicians that were also in Europe at the time. This is in the early 60s, I think, like 62, 63, 64, around there. And as the kind of free jazz, the new thing was coming about and becoming not more popular, but more artists were kind of diving in to that style of jazz out of the hard bop tradition. He did record a couple with Don Cherry, a couple Blue Note records with Don Cherry under Don Cherry's name. I think Complete Communion, and I'm not sure what the other one. Is he on Symphony for Improvisers? I'll have to double check. But the first, he does have a record which I don't have with Dollar Brand. And then there is another one with Cherry, billed under the two of them. But the first kind of leader date in his name, I believe, is this ESP-DISK one. And this is In Search of Mystery. And I did this backwards. I was listening to his later stuff, and then I went back to this, and I need to re-listen to this because it starts off beautifully. And I was like, ooh, this is really nice, but it gets a little heavy. And there are moments on his later LPs where his tone just gets too screechy, and the tone, I just don't resonate with it. And the free moments, it is a free jazz record, and there's just that tone which, kind of at moments rubs me the wrong way. I wish it was more like the beginning, kind of this mysterious vibe. But yeah, honestly, I haven't been listening to or vibing with a lot of free jazz right now, if you listen to my last video, but I will give this one a few more listens and then decide if I want to keep it or not. I love this cover though. This isn't a first pressing, I don't think, but I didn't investigate, and that's the label from the ESP. And now we'll dive into the kind of who we know Gato to be. There's kind of three periods, I guess, for Gato. There's the free jazz period, so the 60s, where he was playing with other musicians, and then which led to this date here. And there's not the other musicians on this one are not musicians that I know at all. I don't recognize their names. Callow Scott, Norris Jones, and Bobby Cap. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the names. And then the next period will be where he takes that jazz, a bit of that free jazz background that he has, and starts blending it with Latin vibes, Latin musicians as well. But just, you know, a blend of really, so becoming Latin jazz, but not in a kind of popular sense of the word. And then later on in his career, which the music I don't know, where he becomes a bit more mainstream and poppy from my understanding, or smooth jazzy. Not my thing, and you know, I probably won't go there. But so the next record he put out is this. It's kind of his first one in this Latin jazz realm, where he decided to start embracing his cultural roots. And I think he went back to Argentina to record this, maybe some in Brazil as well. I know basically a lot of the Latin influences and musicians that he brought in and worked with are from Argentina and Brazil. So there's a lot of Brazilian vibes. So this is the Third World on Flying Dutchman, Gato. And so he's playing here with mostly American musicians. I think there's a mix, but as you'll see as we move along, he starts to incorporate even more Latin sounds and instruments and players. But on here, you know, this is Gato Barbieri. Wow, I'm really having trouble speaking. Charlie Hayden, Beaver Harris, Richard Landrum, who I don't know, Roswell Rudd, and then so all those Hayden, Harris, and Rudd from the free jazz world, and then Lonnie Smith Jr., Lonnie Liston Smith Jr., who is not really, I mean, I'm not sure what his roots are, but you know, he's more in the kind of spiritual jazz realm. This is, you know, really nice record. At times, when he just becomes screechy, I don't love it. The instrumentation, at times I wish sometimes I'm like, I would prefer or really like this just, you know, without the sax, but it is deep music. He builds and he does get out there, he's expressing himself. Where I kind of went wrong is I put some of this on when thinking, oh, you know, it's going to be easy to listen to. And I put it on in the kitchen with my girlfriend, and it just like hit a few moments where it's really heavy and loud, and I was like, okay, this is not the time to listen to this. So over the past week or two, I've been re-listening to these. Last night I sat with them, and you know, they require attentive listening. They're not easy listens. They are deep, and these are all Latin titles on here. Bachianas Brasileiras, Antonio das Mortas, which is, I think, a tribute or the name of a movie. It's a tribute to kind of a Brazilian filmmaker. Is the Argentinian? These are cheap records, so I'll go through them. They're all kind of similar, honestly. There's not like a huge difference. Phoenix, also on Flying Dutchman. So this one, Third World, I think is from 1970. These are all early 70s. This one's from 72. And then he starts to bring in, you have Nana, who I'm not sure, on Bittenbau and Conga. Is that Nana Vasconcelos? I'm not sure. Gene Golden, Lenny White, Joe Beck, Ron Carter, Lonnie Liston Smith. Heavy Brazilian vibes on, you know, I would say he does embrace the Brazilian more than the Argentinian. I'm not an expert, but this one's live. El Pampero, Gato Barbieri in Montreux, Switzerland. Also on Flying Dutchman. He's playing with, I think there's some different lineups here. Also Nana, Lonnie Liston Smith, who seems to be consistent play band member of his, Chuck Rainey, and Bernard Purdy on drums, and Sonny Morgan on congas. So none of these are essential. Like I said, they kind of all have a similar vibe, these Flying Dutchman ones, but incredible value. Great music, they sound good, and they cost you, you know, some of them are, of these records, maybe $2, $3, $5, you know, anywhere from $5 to $10 for a nice copy, probably. Not expensive at all. The last Flying Dutchman one, Under Fire, another great record. Who plays on here? I think we're still in 70, yeah, so now we're into 73. I don't have all of his records. There's a couple of I think there's 1 or 2 Flying Dutchmen I'm missing. Who's playing on here? Lonnie Liston Smith. Now he has John Abercrombie bringing in some electric guitar. Matume, Stanley Clark, Roy Haynes, Aerto. Really good, cheap heat, as we say. Then 2 more. We kind of go into really embracing the Latin American vibes. So these ones are mostly a little bit, sometimes 1 or 2 Latin American musicians, but mostly American jazz musicians. And then we jump into, I think there's 4 of them. I only have the first 2. Gato Barbieri, Chapter 1, Latin America. And then there's Chapter 2, which is Nasta Siempre. And there is a 3 and 4. And this is where he just fully embraces Latin American music. And it's still jazz. I would say these ones are jazz records, Flying Dutchman with Latin American influences. But they're primarily jazz records with Latin vibes. These are primarily Latin records with jazz influences. So he kind of like flipped the script. It's a very basic, way to look at it in interpretation, but no longer playing here with American jazz musicians. It's full on big lineups of, all types of different instruments and artists that I don't think I've heard of any of them. And these are great records, and these are, couple bucks, $2 to $5, maybe 10, but like whatever they are, they're worth seeking out. I wouldn't say go and buy them online, because honestly the shipping is going to be as much as the record. But when you see this in your local shop, if you've never given them a chance, pick them up. A lot of people maybe associate Gato with that later 70s sound, where he's too smooth, but this sweet spot of 70 to 74, I would say, is really good. Like I said, there are moments where he gets a bit screechy in his tone, gets on my nerves, but overall the music is great. Deep records, well recorded, with great musicians. So worth seeking out. Honestly, for the price, it's hard to argue with it. So that's it. Gato Barbieri on ESP, Flying Dutchman, and Impulse. Hope everyone's doing well. I'll be back in a week or 2. Peace.